Hello everybody and welcome to the channel. In today's video we're going to be taking a look at the newly released Transformers Studios Series 86 Voyager class Decepticon Sweep, a figure which I've actually surprisingly been very excited about, despite this guy for the most part just being a simple repaint and slight retool where the hands are concerned. Of course, in the movie there were multiple versions of the Sweeps and Scourge was an incredibly hard figure to actually obtain, so to get this guy reissued, I know that it's going to please so many collectors, and considering there are in fact some modifications made to this guy, this could in fact actually be the better version when in comparison to Scourge. But of course we'll discuss that later on in the video. You can see here for the package we've got, I believe, a brand new piece of artwork there of the Sweep looking fantastic. Of course we've got the Sweep there clearly displayed as we spin our attention here to the side, another piece of artwork of this guy, and then here at the back you've got some product shots of him in bot mode, as well as of course that really weird space almost boat mode, and we of course also do get included a very brief bio. Unicron reformats fallen Decepticons into the Sweeps, deadly hunters created to track down the matrix of leadership. So without further ado, let's crack this Sweep open and see how he stacks up next to the previously released Studio Series Scourge. And so here we have the Sweep cracked open and out of the packaging, and this is definitely going to cause for a super awesome army builder. The colour scheme is really well done, but before we touch base with this guy, we'll very quickly go over the included backdrop. Of course, it is in fact that almost reformatting ray that Unicron used in order to essentially revive some of those dead Decepticons. So you've got there some of the Insecticons, which is really cool, and to be fair, this would probably work quite nicely with the likes of Kingdom Galvatron, especially if that reformatting version is in fact on the horizon. But setting that here off to the side, and of course bringing the Sweep in here for a closer look, we'll very quickly go over the details. For the most part, if you own Scourge, you'll know exactly what to expect besides where the hands are concerned. So you can see that this time he is sporting a much more toy accurate colour scheme when in comparison to the darker purple that Scourge had. Now I personally actually really like how this blue looks. I think it looks awesome, very accurate to the actual toy, and just overall in terms of a visual, I think it looks super impressive. Now as we take a closer look here at the details, you can see that sadly the face sculpt is identical to Scourge. If anything, I wish that maybe they could have altered this slightly in the movie. The Sweeps were in fact actually quite expressive characters, so maybe if they could have given this guy a slightly more bug-eyed look, or if they could have given him perhaps an open mouth expression, just something to differentiate him from Scourge, that would have been super awesome. But as it stands, we've just merely got that almost scowling expression, which doesn't look bad by any stretch of the imagination. And I guess for those of you who couldn't pick up Scourge, this could be a great substitute, especially considering as of course he is essentially just a direct carryover. But you can see here really nice looking paintwork going on for the face. I do like the grey as well as those super awesome red beady eyes, and you can see there his tash clearly sculpted as well as painted. Now if you wanted to actually alter the appearance of the head, you could in fact actually rotate this section around and in fact actually have this reversed. Now some of the actual CG renders that I found of the Sweeps, this section was in fact reversed like this. So once again, if you wanted this just to be a mandatory drone of Scourge, you could essentially reverse this just to slightly differentiate him from of course that character. But personally, in order to keep to the instructions, I will keep this flip forward. You can see in regards to the arms and the torso, really nice looking details, very nice grey detailing going on here for the torso. You can see some nice panel lining as we flip here to the arms. Once again, a very nice shade of light blue, and you can see some grey highlights, and all of these almost mech tech ports are also painted much like they were on the original Scourge figure, which is awesome. So these ones are painted, as so are the ones here on the sides of the legs. And in order to actually showcase the mold differences, it is merely just a reversal in the hands. So Scourge had the open hand on this side, whereas the Sweep now has it on this side. So really and truly, if you wanted to, you could unscrew the back of the arm, or I believe it's the side of the arm here, and in fact actually give Scourge or the Sweep two open hands. It's really up to your own personal preference, and for those of you who decide to pick up multiples of these, I guess you could kind of create a few different variations. But the sculpt work on this looks fantastic. You can see you've got the really nice pink menacing claws there, all of which have been painted very nicely, and the same can also be said here for this fisted hand. And then as we just take a look at the thighs, completely painted, as so are these shin sections, and of course you've got that light shade of blue going on for this region. It would have been great, as considering this guy is essentially a repaint, so we've gotten some pink here on the tip of the toes. That was a qualm I had on Scourge, and is something that I still wish they could have maybe rectified here for the Sweep. But nevertheless, as we just turn our attention here to the back, of course it's the exact same wing setup, which is pretty cool, although I am in fact noticing some new paint apps here on the actual back of the wings, which is something that I wasn't expecting. So that's super cool. You can see how these have been completely painted. Of course we'll bring out Scourge for a comparison in just a second, but running through articulation, we get a ball joint here at the head, which can look left to right as well as tilt side to side and look up and down very slightly. We do in fact get a full rotation here at the shoulder. I did notice that a few copies of Scourge did in fact have a breakage issue going on with these shoulders, so definitely be cautious, especially during transformation, but they can in fact hinge out to the sides. We do get a full rotation there at the bicep, as well as a 90-degree bend there going on for the elbow, full wrist rotation on both of them, although once again, be slightly cautious of the thumb, as it is in fact molded out of a very thin piece of plastic. We do indeed get a full waist rotation, which is excellent. The legs can kick forwards that far, back to I would say about that far, which is excellent as well. Of course, out to the sides, rotation here at the thigh, as well as a 90-degree bend there at the knee. And finally, we do, however, sadly only get a very limited range here in terms of the ankle rocker pivot, but still it does help you to get him into some of those more dynamic poses. And very quickly running through the accessories, he does only include one blaster, of which is the same as Scourge, just cast out of that very nice blue plastic, as well as of course one purple blast effect, which appears to be identical to Scourge. Now, bringing Scourge in here for a comparison, you can see here at first glance that they do in fact appear to be the exact same mold, and that's because 99% they are in fact the same mold. It is merely just the differences in regards to the hands and of course the colour variation, but it is awesome to see this much lighter shade of blue going on here for the sweep. As mentioned beforehand, it's ultimately going to come down to personal preference as to whether or not you guys prefer toy accuracy for these characters, or if you do in fact prefer the more animation accuracy of Scourge. I personally like both of these, and considering these are in fact supposed to be the drones, or I guess you could say the henchmen of Scourge, I have no issue with this colour variation at all. Now the blasters, you can see, same mold, but it is merely just that cast plastic which differs, and the actual blast effect appears to be exactly the same. If anything, the actual one that comes with the sweep might be a slightly darker shade of purple, but that really is it. In terms of paint, it is exactly the same, unless we spin our attention here to the back, where you can see here that the wings are in fact completely painted for this guy. Now sadly, it's an area which is actually going to go completely missed, as you won't see it here from the front, and considering that he does have a rather ugly backpack, it's something that I think is unlikely to actually be shown at all. So it would have been great to have seen them actually take this paint and perhaps actually apply it here to the tip of the toes, as I mentioned in the Scourge and of course the sweep review. But nevertheless, I still think it's a really nice reissue, and as mentioned beforehand, Scourge proved to be an incredibly difficult figure to actually track down. So here's hoping that this re-release will in fact be a little more readily available. I do believe that he is in fact the only Voyager class figure to actually be released for this very mini wave. It is just him and the deluxe Revenge of the Fallen Sideswipe. So once again, if you missed out on this guy, this could perhaps be the best bet of actually adding this guy to the collection. And as mentioned beforehand, if you actually do pick up both of these, you can in fact actually swap the wrists out. So you could have this guy having two open palms and have this guy having two fisted hands. It's completely up to your own personal preference. But yeah, in regards to mold as well as paint, you can see it literally is what you see here. There really isn't that much to say about this guy, but considering he was a character that appeared in the 86 movie, you bet that Hasbro were going to give us a reissue of him. Now, very quickly turning to transformation, of course, you are in fact going to want to remove the accessories. We can come here to the head and rotate this tiny little laser thing around, and of course you could in fact actually attach the blast effect to this as well if you wished for him to be actually emitting some effects from the head, which is actually a really cool look for this guy. Perhaps if he loses his firearm, he could in fact just essentially shoot beams out of the head, which is pretty cool. But you're going to want to flip your attention here to the underside, just collapse these heel spurs in, and something which is pretty nice to see is that there is in fact no evidence of the mold degrading on this guy. All the joints feel incredibly tight, and if anything, I actually find the tolerances to be a little nicer on this guy. Some of the joints on Scourge were in fact too tight to the point where you thought you were going to break them, especially where the wrists are concerned. But you can see here these ones are in fact really free flowing, which is great. We're then going to want to turn our attention here to the back and just attach these tabs and slots. We can then come here to these arms and just attach this shoulder region. Once again, be cautious of this actual shoulder joint. As mentioned beforehand, I have seen some actual images of this having a tendency to snap, so try and apply the pressure here to this actual joint instead of to the actual shoulder joint itself. So just hinge this down. You can see how we've got a tab there that should peg there into the slot of the arm. So hinge this down, ensure the waist is in fact aligned up appropriately, and just snap that section there into place. Of course, come here to this side and repeat the same process. So just snap this section down, bring this all the way down until that snaps in, and if these two decided to attach, just try and push them back together. We can then angle this out to the side. You're then going to want to lift this section up and just cover that over the tip of the head section. We can then fold this piece out and essentially completely extend all of this here, just like so. And you can see we've got two tabs here and here that will peg into two slots on the back. So just snap that there into place. We can then hinge this cavity forwards and in fact conceal the face there of the sweep, which is super cool. We can take these, angle these to the back, and of course come to this side and repeat the same process. Fold out these sections and ensure that they don't in fact actually pop out of place. And then it is just a matter of bringing these two halves together, just snap them there into place. You can see we've got a nice tab there at the bottom that should just click in, and then just slide all of these joints in just like so. And of course repeat the same process here for this side. Snap this in just like so. And of course, repeat the same process here for this side, snap that in, and just collapse these wings in. And with all that being said, here we've got the sweep fully transformed up into that super awesome, super abstract looking flying spaceship mode. Now you can see here it's exactly the same to Scourge. There is no mold differences at all. I really do once again love the color variation. The paintwork here for the front of the nose cone has turned out really nicely. You can see how it's that very nice almost pinkish purple color, very similar to what we actually got with Scourge. We've got Decepticon insignia slap bang there in the center. Some very nice looking sculpt work going on here from a bird's eye perspective. Of course, we've got these almost turbines or thrusters here at the back, which look awesome. You can see the feet clearly displayed here, but to be fair, considering how abstract the actual alt mode looks, I actually don't have much of an issue with this. And as we flip here to the underside, you can once again see that really nice paintwork that we've now got going on here for these wings. And in terms of actual weapon storage, you could take this blaster, attach it here, of course, onto the tip section of the head, or we can turn our attention here to the back and actually peg it into any of the ports. It would have been nice if they could have maybe included 3 of these, so that we could have had 2 actually ejecting here out of the thrusters, and then 1 actually attached to the head. And I actually thought in the live stream that's what they alluded to, but nope, he does sadly only come with 1. And I guess you could also actually attach it here onto these sections too. And in regards to the blaster, this can be pegged onto any of the sides like so. Now, in order to actually showcase the third mode that this guy's got going for him, before we actually do that, I'll very quickly bring in Scourge for a comparison. Once again, exactly the same mold, it's just merely that color, mainly here for the main body of the character, which changes. So it was very purple here on Scourge, whereas of course it's very blue here on the sweep. And as we just flip here to the underside, you can once again see the new paint apps that we've got going on here for these wing sections. But the third mode for this guy is of course the head reveal that we see Scourge mainly showcase in the movie when he wants to gut Ultra Magnus. So you will want to just essentially explode all of this. To be honest, it's more hassle than it's worth. I tend to just flip this hatch down and have it looking something like this, but the instructions do showcase it being a little more intricate. So you are going to want to fold all of this out and just essentially mistransform as if you were going back to robot mode with these wings. So pull this section here out. We can then in fact actually lift this piece up and hinge this here. We can then bring all of this back in and snap all of that back there into place, snap this front half in, and you can see that we've got a tab here that should in fact actually slide into a slot here on the side of this thruster. So snap that in there, make sure that these legs do in fact stay tabbed in, as so to the arms, and of course just come here to this side and repeat the exact same process. Just snap that section in as well. And there you've got him in his third mode. Now, once again, more hassle than it's worth. To be honest with you, I could probably tidy it up a little better than this, but I just really don't get why you just wouldn't fold the hatch down, as I find this to be very extra for what is merely just revealing the head. But you can definitely pop that up to make it look slightly more exposed, to recreate the various scenes where he does in fact actually stick the head up from the hatch. So, some final thoughts here for this Transformers Studio Series 86 Voyager class Decepticon sweep. Overall, it's a very nice repaint slash retool. I really can't fault it. It does exactly what it says on the tin, and that's to be a sweep, which is essentially just a Scourge clone anyway. I think the actual differences they've made in terms of the paint deco are super cool. I actually really love this vibrant blue that we've got going on. Of course, it may not be 100% accurate to the animation model, but I really do believe if they were to simply just recast him in the same colour as Scourge, I think collectors would have had more of an issue with that. And the fact that they have harkened it back to the original G1 toy, I think is a really nice touch. And for those of you who don't like this colour scheme, then you can in fact actually try your best to actually track down Scourge. But I think the sweep is a really nice looking character. I also do like that they did do the slight variation in regards to actually switching up the open palmed hand and of course the fisted hand. Personally, I would have loved to have gotten a brand new head sculpt. I really think that would have been the icing on the cake for this guy, as it would have really differentiated him from Scourge. But as it stands, it is just the same, and it's not a massive deal breaker, as of course, as mentioned beforehand, he is supposed to be just the same as Scourge. And considering Scourge was such a hard figure to actually track down, and this guy is essentially the only Voyager in this wave, I think he's going to be a little easier to actually pick up. And for those of you who couldn't pick up Scourge at all, then this could in fact actually be the best way and the most affordable way of getting this mold into your collection. And considering the differences really are only minor in comparison to Scourge, you could essentially have this guy just being Scourge in your collection, which I also think is a really nice touch, and is maybe why they didn't do some of those alterations to the head for those collectors who couldn't pick up that original figure. As to why they won't just reissue Scourge, I honestly have no idea, but I think the sweep is definitely a nice guy, probably not going to be the most sought after figure in this entire line, but once again, for a repaint, I think he does exactly what he should. And considering that there were multiples of these in the actual show, there was no doubt that Hasbro were in fact going to reissue this guy in some way, shape or form. So all that being said, this is definitely a really nice nice figure to actually add to the collection. I would love to know down in the comment section below on what you guys think of Sweep as well as Scourge in general. Is this a character that you shall be adding to your collection? If you already own Scourge, will you be picking up Sweep, or will you in fact actually be army building this guy and trying to track down more? I want at least one so that I can have 3 of this mold, as of course in the movie I do believe there were in fact 2, or there could in fact even be 3 Sweeps, so maybe I will in fact actually have to try and track down 2. But it's a solid mold, great looking robot mode, great looking vehicle mode, and of course the transformation is very simplistic yet effective. I thank you guys all so much for watching, and until my next review I'll see you then. Thanks for watching.